أهلا وسهلا بكم طلبة الفرقة الثالثة إرشاد في مراجعة سريعة جدا على معبد الكرنك اللي احنا درسناه. احنا درسنا في هذا الترم the East Bank of Luxor City and we started the studying by the Karnak Temples. And actually we call it Cornick Temples because it's a group of temples surrounded with one enclosure wall. This temple, which has a lot of cartouches for kings, starting from the Middle Kingdom to the Greek Roman period, especially the Ptolemaic period, is considered one of the biggest monument in all over the world and the biggest temple in Egypt. The word Karnak, it's deriving from the ancient Egyptian name for this place, Carnage, which is appear in Dandra temple dated back to the time of Ptolemy III. This word and this name for this temple, Carnage, it means the house of the duck. And actually that was one of the form and one of the shape of the god Amun-Ra, who's worshipped here in this temple. Another theory about the name, some archaeologists believe that the word Cornick deriving from the name of one of the Arabian tribe dwelled in this area, were called themselves the Kawarnak, and they were originally from Iraq, so they lived in this area, so they called the area the Karnak area or the Karnak district, and later the temple called Cornick Temple. The temple is just an amazing place. It's a very huge one, and actually we will study just one axis of this temple. There are two axes for this temple. One, the entrance is looking to the west, and there is a gate by the end of this axe. Is the Roman gate. It's looking to the east, but there is another axe just beside the lake, the sacred lake, and this axe which just go to the north and connected to the Sphinx Avenue, which lead to Luxor Temple. In this temple and around this one, Cornick, there are three Sphinx Avenue. We will study one of them, this one in front of the main entrance, and the other two we will study them. Here is the harbor, which used by the ships of the visitors, and also used during the main feast of this temple, the Opet festival, and used to put the three very famous ships or parks of the god, the triad of the temple, Amun-Ra, Mut, and Khonsu. Put these golden ships on wooden huge ships, put them in the water, and drive them from this temple towards the Luxor temple. By the end of the harbor, we have two obelisks. These obelisks made of sandstone, and actually they are very small obelisks, not that huge like the obelisk inside, and they were built here by the king Seti II. Just behind the obelisk, down the ramp, we will get to inside the Sphinx Avenue, and the Sphinx here on both sides representing the god Amun-Ra, the god of this temple, and the god of the sun. It's represented here in the form of a body of a lion with the head of a ram, and under the head we have a statue for the king Ramses II. The first pylon, which is dating back to the 30th dynasty, but we have some cartouches on the right tower dating back to the Ptolemaic period. As you can see, the pylon, the whole pylon, which is considered the highest pylon in all over Egypt, is unfinished, and the walls, the blocks not polished at all except to the main entrance. In the pylon we have some windows. These windows used by the guards to protect the temple and even by the priests themselves. And in front of each tower there are four recesses. These recesses used to fix the flags of Egypt and the flags of the temple and the flags of the triad of this. Here behind the right tower just behind it we can see that ramp which used originally to build this tower. It's made of mud brick, and actually this is the original one dating back to the late period, and yeah, it left it here to show you the way of construction of the. Just behind the first pylon we have the open court. It's the biggest open court ever in all the temples in Egypt, and it's full of a lot of monuments dating back to different periods. First of all, just behind the pylons we have two rows of the Sphinx Avenue. They continued of Sphinx Avenue and was originally running in the middle of this court before building the first pylon, running in front of the second pylon. But after building the open court and the first pylon, the ancient Egyptian removed these Sphinx to the sides and used the middle area to build more temples. Just behind the pylon, the first pylon, and to the left side in the way in, you can see these three shrines which built by Seti, first of the 19th dynasty, and these shrines used to keep the golden parks of the triad Amun, Mut, and Khonsu. We have here the altar to the left side, and to the right the Sphinx, which made of alabaster dating back to the time of Tut. The temple of Ramses III, and as you can see it's a very small temple, and consider the size of Karnak Temple itself. In front of the temple we have statues representing Ramses III stand. Here is again, and the scene behind on the pylon, small pylon of this temple representing the king to the left side holds all those enemies of Egypt who are kneeling in front of him from their hair and smiting them using his mask, give them as an offering to the god Amun-Ra, who's representing to the right side. Here the open court of the temple, and the statues here are representing the King Ramses III in the Othorian. The Bubastis Hall. Here is the original temple of Taharka, one of the kings of late period. Actually the temple completely destroyed except this column, which is considered the highest column in all over Egypt. Originally there were 9 of these columns, but they are completely destroyed, and this small kiosk or building called the kiosk, because it was originally here the remains of this kiosk of Taharka. Just in front of the destroyed second pylon we have a statue for the king Ramses II, representing him standing with the arm crossed, holding the crook and flail, and above his head the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, and in front of him the statue of his wife and his daughter in the center. The second pylon completely destroyed. It's a very unique pylon. Find inside this pylon small blocks temple of the god Aton, and this temple was built by Akhenaten inside Karnak, but after the end of this religious revolution by Akhenaten, they destroyed the temple and used it later to build the second pylon. In the way to inside on the walls or the entrance of the second pylon, you can see just marks show us the level of the foundation. For example, this is the level of the foundation in 1880. The hypostyle hall, it's the biggest hypostyle hall ever in Egypt, and actually the size of the columns here are very huge. It has 134 columns in 2 different. This court was built by the king Seti first and completed by his son King Ramses II. This is the original court was looked like, and as you can see the 2 rows of columns in the middle is much higher than the rest of the columns around. Scenes on the walls are very traditional, representing the king making offering to the gods. Here is the king running in front of the god Ra. The Opit festival with the chip of the god Amun-Ra on the shoulder of the king and the priests around him. The king inside the tree of life was Tohot just behind, the name of the on the outer wall of this court, this scene which is representing Seti the first fighting against his enemy using his horse cat. That's the third pylon. As you can see, it's very destroyed. It dated back to the Amenophi. Just behind the fourth pylon, dating back to the Thutmose period. In front of between the fourth pylon and the third pylon, we have this obelisk to the left side, which was built originally and erected originally by the king Thutmose I, the father of the Queen Hatshepsut. Here is the fifth pylon dating back to the time of Thutmose III. Some statues for Hatshepsut in the way to inside. The court of Thutmose III, all of this area built originally by. Here this plane show you the sanctuary, which is the dark area in the middle, the main sanctuary of the temple. The sixth pylon, and this scene is representing some of the cities and other places, other countries that the king conquered, Thutmose III conquered during his the 15 campaigns, and he wrote the name of these cities that he conquered, which is represented as in oval form, the name written oval form with the head and the body of the enemy. Statue representing two statues, both of them representing the god Amun-Ra with the two feathers above the head. In front of the sanctuary, we have these two columns, one decorated with lotus and the other with papyrus. One refers to Upper Egypt and the other to Lower Egypt, both built here and erected, each with one piece of granite brought from Aswan by King Thutmose III. Just behind the sanctuary to the right side, we have this chapel which built by Hatshepsut. Actually, it's completely damaged by the soldiers of Thutmose I, the her enemy, and after the death of the queen, he destroyed all of her temple and removed all of the figures of the queen and even her cartouches. The sanctuary, and we are in front of the sanctuary which built originally by Amenophi III, but the sanctuary nowadays, which we get inside, it's dating back to the time of, and this sanctuary, which made completely from granite, built by Philip Atreides, who never came to Egypt and visited Egypt before. He was the brother of the king Alexander the Great. Just behind the sanctuary of the temple, we could see this big court, which is a little bit empty, but actually this is the oldest part of the temple. It's the court of the Middle Kingdom. It's empty now, just closure wall and small altars made of alabaster in the middle. We have here on one of these altars the oldest cartouche inside Karnak Temple, which is belonged to the King Senusert I of the just behind this court, we have the celebrity court of Thutmose III, which had the form of the camp, not a temple, like those kind of military. Here are the columns inside this court. Just very important place of this temple of Thutmose III is this area, which hasn't a roof. It's some scenes on the walls show a lot of different kind of birds, animals, flowers, trees, and so on. And actually, those this area we call it the zoo. And those animals and birds, Thutmose III brought them from his during his first campaign from all around the walls, and he brought with him in the way back to Egypt different kind of animals and birds, which is not popular in Egypt during that time. Here is the altar, the main altar. Now we can see from behind the temple, yeah, a very good look to the temple. We go through starting from the first, the entrance, the first pylon, until get to by the end, in the bottom of this picture, the main entrance during the Roman period, and to the east. To the left side, this is the Sacred Lake, which also built originally by the king. Here is the Sacred Lake, and was used originally to measure the level of the water in the River Nile, because it was originally connected to the River Nile with a small tunnel under the ground. The Nilometer, just beside this. And finally, in Cornick Temple, this is the Scarab, which is the biggest statue for a scarab in all over Egypt, and this is one of the forms of the god Amun-Ra. احنا خدنا هذا الترم، خدنا ببساطة ابتدينا بمقدمة من صفحة 5 ل 9، ودي مقدمة عن الأقصر. كمان خدنا معبد الكارنك ابتداء من صفحة 59 إلى 103. أتمنى لكم التوفيق إن شاء الله في امتحاناتكم، وبالتوفيق لكم جميعا.